Well, let's talk about something that quietly became one of the biggest storylines of the Detroit Lions offseason, and it's the end of the Taylor Decker era in Detroit. For nearly 10 years, Decker was one of the most stable pieces of this franchise. When the Lions drafted him in the first round back in 2016 out of Ohio State, the idea for him was simple. They were looking for a cornerstone left tackle who could protect the quarterback's blind side and anchor the offensive line. And for 10 seasons, that's exactly what he did. He's a great offensive lineman. This stings, I'm not going to lie. Decker started 140 games for Detroit, and he became the longest tenured player on the roster. He's been a steady presence through rebuilds, coaching changes, and eventually the team's rise into contention. But obviously, that era is over. Last week, Decker announced that he requested and received his release from the Lions after contract discussions between him and the organization broke down. And according to reports, the team asked the veteran tackle to take a pay cut, and the two sides couldn't find common ground. And so, rather continue with uncertainty, Decker decided it was time to move on after 10 seasons wearing Honolulu blue. And I got to tell you, make no mistake about this, folks. This is a massive development for the Lions. It's a problem, honestly. Offensive linemen don't always get the headlines, but if you've watched Detroit over the past several years, you know the offensive line has been the engine that makes the entire offense run. Their physical identity, running the ball, controlling the clock, protecting Goff, has been built around that group up front. And Decker was a major part of it, lining up at left tackle game after game, season after season. The reality now is that the Lions have a huge void to fill, and an unplanned one, because it wasn't just long ago that Decker said he was coming back. Posted on Instagram, carrying on, send me, yada, yada, and now he's out. Left tackle is one of the most important positions in football because it protects the quarterback's blind side. When that position is stable, everything works better. When it isn't, things unravel quickly. And now Detroit has suddenly found itself needing a replacement for a player who had been one of the most reliable starters in the entire league. Think about what this means for the offense. Goff has thrived in Detroit largely because of the protection he's had in front of him. He's not Pat Mahomes. I've talked about this before in other segments. He's not Josh Allen. He's not going to run the ball. He's not going to Lamar Jackson it. That's not going to happen. The Lions have consistently been among the better pass blocking teams in the NFL, giving Goff time to operate and allowing the offense to run its play action heavy system. That's out the window now, unless they do something about it. I mean, we're going to see. But when your left tackle is a proven veteran like Decker, you don't have to worry about that side of the line. Now, suddenly, that's out the window. That's gone. And it's not just about the passing game either. Detroit's running attack, featuring backs like Gibbs, has been one of the most physical and effective ground games in the NFL. The success starts with the offensive line creating space and controlling the line of scrimmage. Decker was a big part of that identity, setting the edge and helping establish the Lions' downhill style. And so losing him changes the equation for how this offense operates. What makes this situation even more concerning is that the Lions' offensive line has already gone through changes recently. Other veterans along the line have either retired or moved on, meaning the group that once looked like one of the strongest units in football suddenly has multiple question marks. Some reports even noted that with Decker gone, Detroit now has significant holes to address along the line heading into the 2026 season. I'm not going to mince words here. I mean, this Montgomery thing, Decker, we'll see how this Terrion Arnold thing plays out, that he may get cut. Lord only knows. I mean, if he gets convicted of something, it's going to be a problem. So if you don't know what that's about, feel free to tune into that. But we need to focus on what the Lions are going to do next, because Brad Holmes and the front office have a few options, but none of them are very easy. I'm telling you that right now. They're not good. They could try to find a veteran replacement in free agency, but a quality left tackle is rare and expensive. And we already know they're making cap moves. I mean, they would have kept Decker if he would have taken a pay cut. Obviously, he was not interested in doing that. They could look to the draft if you feel like that should be a very high pick at this point. I mean, do you feel it should be an RB2? Maybe they go to RB2 to replace Montgomery in free agency. If Terrion Arnold gets cut, that's a first round pick. The 2 years later's off the team. I know they wanted Max Crosby. That didn't happen. Are we going to, I mean, now they've got a left tackle problem. Relying on a rookie to immediately protect your franchise quarterback is a pretty risky move. Or they could attempt to shift players already on the roster into new roles, but that can create a domino effect across the entire offensive line. One thing is clear. This is now one of the biggest priorities for the Lions heading into the draft and the rest of the offseason. I can tell you that right now. This just moved up to the top of the list. Is it number one? We can argue that. We can debate that. But it's at the top of the list, I'm going to tell you that. That front line's got to be in order. And analysts around the league are already linking Detroit to several offensive tackle prospects because the need is so glaringly obvious. The team that once looked completely set at tackle now has to find a long-term solution at one of the most critical positions in all of football. There's also an emotional element to this story that shouldn't be overlooked. Because Decker wasn't just another player on the roster. He was one of the leaders of the locker room. He went through the tough years where the Lions were rebuilding and stuck around long enough to help the team become competitive again. Those kinds of players matter inside a franchise. When someone like that leaves, it changes the dynamic of the team. And that's why this moment feels like the end of a chapter for the Lions. Decker represented the bridge between the old Lions and the new Lions. The team that finally started to believe it could compete with the best teams in the league. Now the organization has to move forward without him. The big question now is whether the Lions can replace not just the player, but the stability he provided. Because when you're trying to compete in the NFL, especially when you have playoff aspirations, the last thing you want is uncertainty on the offensive line. They just can't have that. So as the offseason continues and as we get closer to the draft, we're going to be keeping an eye on this situation. The Lions have built their offense around toughness in the trenches, and losing a 10-year starting left tackle creates a challenge that this team absolutely has to solve. If they find the right replacement, then the offense can keep rolling. But if they don't, the ripple effects could impact everything. Pass protection, to the running game, to the overall rhythm of the offense. And that's why Taylor Decker leaving Detroit isn't just another roster move. It's one of the biggest turning points of the Lions offseason so far, and it could shape the direction of the offense for the entire 2026 season. Keep it locked. You're listening to Midnight Sports Detroit.